I went on this massive binge on reading Pista Sophia, Nag Hammadi, codices. I started to read the Quran, looked into the Talmud, started to read the Bible, and everything that I was finding started to disturb me because it was like our religious books are just mere carbon copies of the Sumerian tablets.
The original teachings have been destroyed for the Western mind, for you to be controlled. And you may not believe that. You may think, wow, Brad, you're going off the deep end. But the reality is I grew up Catholic and then Christian and all this. And I started to realize I was almost being kept in a childlike state.
So on one side of the staff, Enki is good. But when he goes to the next side, he's bad. He goes to the next side, good, next side, bad. And the same as Enlil, because the information is so powerful. And that's similar to like what happened to Arjuna and Krishna, where when he saw the full brilliance of Krishna, he got scared. He was like, no more. I can't do it anymore. Please stop. So, that book, Lost Book of Enki, led me down some really interesting books that I've further read. If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned because we have some more great content coming soon. Life can change in a single heartbeat, and for me, it happened twice. The first time was in 2005 on the asphalt with a broken ankle from a motorcycle crash that shifted the entire trajectory of my life and career. The second came in 2017 with life-changing reconstructive ankle surgery that shifted my identity and stripped away everything I thought I was. Hello, beautiful and amazing people. Welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I am your host, Todd Cave. On this episode, I was a guest on the Awakened Nation podcast with Brad Szollose, where we explored my journey from civil engineer to fitness trainer, and now to teaching about consciousness, spirituality, the Anunnaki, plant medicine, and hosting this very show. My story is about overcoming pain, surrendering to the unknown, and discovering the alchemy that turns devastation into transformation. If you've ever wondered what it takes to rebuild not just your life, but your soul, stay tuned.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster and then learn how to control it.
You gotta be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why it is really hard to really crack the matrix, because there's so many levels and layers to it,
Hey, everybody. Man, you are in for a treat today. I got a buddy on today that I was introduced to from Shannon Blaine. Big shout out to Shannon. Thank you. But what intrigued me about Todd Cave, is he's the host of the Conscious Man 7 podcast. And he talks about everything, man. Spirituality, evolution of human consciousness, religion, fitness, ancient hidden history, current affairs, geopolitics, social dynamics between men and women, and personal development. And he's into fitness and all this other stuff, and ancient hidden history, and much, much more. And I thought, my audience is going to love you, man. So welcome to the show, Todd. Welcome to Awakened Nation, my friend.
Many thanks, Brad, and I'm very happy to be here. And shout out to you, Shannon, for introducing us today.
Good, good. Get a pen and paper, my friends, or pencil, whatever you prefer, because it's time to take some notes here. Now, you sent me your bio earlier, but rather than you read the bio, I really want to dig into. You were a former civil engineer, specifically a tunnel engineer, who worked on what was the biggest project in Europe called the Crossrail. And then your life came crashing down and you had to get foot surgery. Let's start there if we can.
Sure. So basically, what happened to me is that in 2005, I had an accident. I was riding my motorcycle and I fell off and I broke my foot. And it was that moment that my entire life changed. The entire trajectory of my life changed. And because it was a very bad break and I had complications, I was told that I would need further surgery in the future to correct those complications. And then comes 2016 and those complications started to act up. And I was faced with a choice of this major surgery. And when I did the surgery, I would never forget when I woke up, because it was a 6-hour surgery. It was like 12,000 pounds. And it was super, super evasive. So anyone that goes to my profile can see like some of the pictures. And if you want, I can send you some pictures as well to show you. But I had what you call an Elizarov frame drilled into my foot. And when I say drilled, I mean drilled. So it was a metal frame that was drilled into my ankle. And what they did is that they drilled into my shin and to my foot, and they separated the two bones between the actual in that what made the ankle, and they did that to allow the cartilage to grow back. And I would never forget that after I woke up, and obviously I knew what the surgery was, but when I woke up and I saw it on my foot, the literal words that I said were, "What have I done?" I knew from that moment that my entire life changed. So what happened is that after I had the surgery, that surgery basically was the catalyst for a series of dominoes in my life to fall. One of the dominoes was that I was made redundant from the Crossrail project. And mind you, at the time, life was good. I was making good money. I was traveling, having loads of fun. And I was made redundant. So then after I was made redundant, I got really, really fat. And then I started to get depressed because my foot wasn't healing as fast as I wanted to heal. And what happened is that I started to go down a really sort of like deep, dark hole of like, I was on the verge of like depression with everything that I was going through. And one of my good mates in England, shout out to you, Peter, he gave me 2 books to read. And those books are basically what steered my life into the trajectory that it is now. One of the books was called The Road Less Traveled, and the next one was called The 5 Love Languages. And in those books highlighted to me that self-improvement, taking responsibility for yourself and for your actions is very, very important. And instead of me trying to blame the world and blame the universe and what's not, because it was my fault that I broke my foot in 2005. So as a consequence, it's my fault that I had to get the surgery. And then I was made redundant because I couldn't look for another job because I knew I had the surgery. So that was still my fault. So those 2 books basically made me start to go down this path of like trying to figure myself out, because at that time, not that I didn't used to take responsibility for things, but you don't become present to it. Yeah. And the books and the surgery made me become present to it. So what happened then is that at that time in 2017, this was when Donald Trump was just in office, and I was tired of basically just using social media and just posting memes and all that kind of stuff, and laughing at supposed normies and stuff. And I started to pick up a book. So the first book that I had picked up was a book called The Lost Book of Enki. And that sparked my interest in the things that we will talk about on this show, where it's like, because my father had given me that book like, from memories, I think this was like 2008.
Yeah.
And I had quarter read the book, but at that time where my head was, it didn't seem very interesting. So I was just part reading it. But when I took it up now, because I had all the time in the world, I was on crutches for 15 months, stuck in my four walls in my room, and I started to read this book. And that book blew me away. And I was like, wow. So according to this guy, basically he's saying that we were seeded here from extraterrestrials. And I was like, this can't be right. Zacharias Sitchin, he's got to be full of BS.
Right.
So what happened then is that I ended up finding a channel on YouTube. At the time, the name was The Global Witness. He was an anon. So he used to post anonymous videos. And then he later on unmasked, and he came out and revealed his identity. And he basically was saying some really strange things. He was saying that in the Bible, in the Genesis story, the serpent in the Garden of Eden is actually the creator of us. And I'm like, this guy is mad. He can't be. So what happened is that he started to tell on his shows all the books that he read and where his sources were. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to prove this guy wrong because he just can't be right.
Right.
So I went on this massive binge on reading Pista Sophia, Nag Hammadi, codices. I started to read the Quran, looked into the Talmud, started to read the Bible, and everything that I was finding started to disturb me because it was like, hold on a minute. Well, all I'm seeing is that our religious books are just mere carbon copies of the Sumerian tablets, which Zacharias Sitchin said are the original tales that all of our society is built upon. And I was like, okay. So I started to go through that phase now where I was like, okay, no, I need to read more. And then I started to, because I just couldn't believe what I was finding.
Right. Not to interrupt, but I want everybody to imagine this for a moment. You know, Todd, for most men, when you lose your job, you lose your identity. So, you know, you're crushed. You are going around on crutches. And this wasn't a little operation. This was major surgery. And here you are. I'm trying to paint the picture for everybody. You're forced to wake up. And I think that spirit gives us these moments where suddenly we're forced to go down a certain road because you've been chosen, man, to get the word out on a lot of this stuff. Would you say that's true?
On hindsight, talking to you today in 2024, I would say yes. At the time, I would say no because I kept talking to my mother. Because my mother was, fortunately or unfortunately, she was like the person I would just tell all this information to. I needed an outlet. And she was very patient and she always listened to me. And she's a very good mother and a very good woman. And I just couldn't understand why it is I'm finding all this information. What is the reason? And I would just keep telling her stuff. So I gave her some of the stuff to read, like the Atrahasis and the Enuma Elish. And she couldn't even finish the Enuma Elish because it's so grim in there, where you have basically humans having to eat their own children in order to live and all that kind of stuff. When they thought they sacrificed one of the gods and did an incantation to create man. And this was like some really eerie stuff for her. So she couldn't even finish it. And I just kept wondering, why am I finding all this information? And why am I just like so perturbed by how things are? And as I started to delve further and further, I started to go really into the Quran and then the Bible as well. I'm like, but these stories, like, because I started to realize that the word that we refer to as God, one, is very limiting to me because God is actually the ineffable, which means it can't be pronounced, is the omnipresent, omnipotent. And there's no real word you can use, but the best word I find is source, or the creator of all things. And I started to see a common theme in Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And is that there seemed to be a schizophrenic God. where in one moment he's saying good things, and then in the next moment he's saying, go and drive these people out of their lands, rape, murder, and pillage, destroy, you know what I mean? And just like kill all the men and the boys when you see them. I'm like, but this can't be from God. So then I started to have my own spiritual awakening that was forced upon me through, as a result of having my surgery and then losing my job. And what you said is exactly right. I felt like my identity was lost because here it is, I was a really good civil engineer on the biggest project in Europe at the time. And that project was worth 16 billion pounds. I had I used to travel all over the world, and you know what I mean? I never had an issue with girls and stuff. So I was living life, right? And then you come crashing down where now, like, your source of income is taken away. Then your identity is taken away. My physique was taken away. All of these things started to happen to me. And I'm like, and all I'm doing here is reading books in order to try to cope because I thought that I was going to lose my mind, right?
Yeah.
And then as I started to read more, I came across a website once. This was like so random. And I was looking for some information on Sananda. And basically I found this website randomly. And the author of the website said that basically further down in the article, if you found this website, then you are one of the chosen ones that will be to help usher in the new earth and to teach, inform, and educate others about what's really going on. And I said that to my mother at the time. I sent her the link and everything. I said, but Mai, because I call my mother Mai because Portuguese, that's mother in Portuguese. I said to her, but Mai, like, what does all this mean, though? I said, but am I really chosen to do all this? She says, I don't know, son. Well, we see. And fast forward to like, I left England, relocated to Latin America. And then one of the reasons why I like Latin America is because I have access to psychedelic medicine. So peyote, bufo alvarez, ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, and I did them all because I was really trying to search for myself and my identity and find out who and what I am. And the medicine really, really helped me. It showed me many things. I was able to connect to a past life. I know 100% that 500 years ago, I was Portuguese. I was marinheiro, which means sailor. I connected with that past life and all the memories came back of me on the ship singing fado, which is Portuguese music indigenous to Portugal. So, it was a real journey for me,
Yeah. I love your journey, because I've had very similar things happen to me. I've done ayahuasca and peyote and, hape and sananga. And what I find is consciousness here in the United States and all around the world, I'm not just saying the US, but something started to really shift in the 60s and 70s here because, you were talking about Zecharia Sitchin. A lot of people don't realize, these books started coming out. When I was a kid, I picked up a copy of Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. And he started to lay out that these might be extraterrestrial beings that came to us instead of what, these are accounts in the Bible, not of God, but of space beings. And I thought, oh, that might be possible. And then I started reading some Zecharia Sitchin who talked about how we were created. All these, the Anunnaki coming down and creating man to be a slave race, basically. And a lot of people may think this is some sort of science fiction, but these are all based on tablets and writings and analysis that these men have done some very deep research. And I take my hat off to you in this awakening because I truly believe you've been chosen to do this work. You've been chosen. And I hate to say it. It's happened to me. It's happened to you. It's happened to so many people. We were on that course that the physical universe tells us to do. go to college, get a good job, do right for our mom and dad, do all these things out of perfection, make a good living. And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, folks, if you're listening and you're rolling your eyes, did God really put you on this earth to just work for 45 years and then die? There's something greater that we all have been chosen to do. We just have to figure out what our mission is. And Todd, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give a little bit of context as to some of this work. And I really want to go into this. And this is why I want to do on the show is the plant medicines that have been used for thousands and thousands of years to wake people up in consciousness. And I believe it was Graham Hancock. He did a TED Talk that was banned years ago, where he talked about ayahuasca and the awakening of consciousness. And he stated there's a war on consciousness. They want you dumbed down on this planet. They want you to not know your heritage. And on many, many levels, Graham said this as well. We are a species that has amnesia. We can't remember who built the pyramids. We can't remember, that lineage should have been passed down. And so here we are in a day and age now where people are beginning to wake up. And I want to talk now really about your journey with these plant medicines that, awaken us at such a profound level that even places like Stanford University and all these colleges around the world are starting to do the research on these traditional tribal medicines that are now available to everyone.
Yes. So my first encounter with the medicine was ayahuasca. And what happened to me is that after I had my surgery in 2017, I went down this deep, dark hole of myself. And I knew that my time in England was finished. I knew I had to get out, but I did not know where I was going to go. I did not know how it was going to look. I did not know what I was going to do.
Right.
And there was this guy that I found on YouTube. His name was Jeff Berwick. So he's a Canadian expat that lives in Mexico, and he has a conference called Acapulco that he hosts in Acapulco, Mexico. So I remember I had always followed him because he was the guy that the reason why I got into cryptocurrency and precious metals and understood a little bit more about the system and how it's a fraud and that taxation is just theft, all these kind of anarchist type philosophies. And I remember it was 2018 and he had started to just bring out the promotion for Acapulco 2019. And this was like, we talking about 8 months away. I bought my ticket in June and I'm like, I'm going. I knew that there was going to be ayahuasca there because he had said in some of his blogs that there's ayahuasca there and that he's done it. And I looked into it and I was like, okay, I can't get ayahuasca in England. And I know I need something. I need to do something different to break out of this paradigm that I'm in, because I just felt so lost. I was on the verge of depression. I didn't, because subsequently I had gotten another job in 2017, October, and then I was made redundant again in 2018. So it was like, had the surgery, was made redundant, got back another job, started that job on crutches, and then finished that job in March 29, 2018. And then I was off crutches, and then I was without a job. So it was made redundant again. So I was like, okay. I was like, I just can't get a win. So I bought the ticket to Acapulco, bought my flight, all that stuff, and was just waiting, sitting down in England, waiting till February 2019. And when I went to the conference, I was blown away. Like, I knew a lot of stuff, but the energy there was electric. And it was like, okay, this is the place where I have to be. The energy was like telling me, even when I got off the plane and when I landed in Mexico City, I felt a shift in me energetically. Like it is so much lighter in Mexico. So I was like, okay, boom, let's go to this conference and what's not. And then when I went there, I I did the ayahuasca ceremony. But the funny thing about that ceremony is that it was not what I expected. Now, what I have learned through several ceremonies is that the medicine always knows, and it is where you are in your journey. Yep. So what happened to me is that I had more purging than a trip. And on hindsight, that was the process to start to get all of the negativity, and the negative energy out of me. And I remember that night so well. So just before they were going to close the ceremony, you would go to the shaman and you would sit down and they would do like a reading overview, but basically energetically, right? So he sat down and it was a lady shaman that I had as well. There were two shamans, a French guy and an American lady. And I went to her and I told her what was going on in my life and what's not. And she said to me, Todd, I have never seen, felt, or experienced a person in my presence that had such a bright Christ consciousness inside of them. And I looked at her like, well, what does that mean? You know what I mean? I understood Christ, but I didn't fully understand what Christ consciousness was.
Right. And
she said, it is so bright, Todd. And I was like, okay, so what do we do with that? She says, well, basically, she says, first thing first, I can see that where your ankle is, and there's like a shackle, like a chain on your ankle in the spirit world, in the etheric world. And she says, I'm going to cut that, I'm going to sever that connection for you. And she says, it is your responsibility from here on now to keep that connection off of you in the things that you say and the things that you do. Yeah. And she told me what to do. I said, okay. And from there, then that was when I think the real roller coaster of my life started, because like when you first, there are different stages of awakening and in your journey. Yeah. And the first stage is that you start to realize you get angry with the system and what's not. But then the next one is like you try to save everybody, tell everybody what's not. I went through that because I used to be battling the Muslims and the Jehovah's Witness back in London. You know what I mean? Yeah. Trying to tell them that, you know, it's all fake. And then the next part is when your actual real awakening comes, which is, I call it my refinement period. Some other people call it the dark night of the soul. And that period between 2019 and 2024 were the absolute hardest years of my life. Like it pushed my belief in myself to the limit of like almost breaking. Yeah. And what happened then is that I did ayahuasca a few months after that with the male shaman, the French shaman that was at that conference. I booked with him and I went to Tulum and I saw him. And that ceremony is the one that blew the trapdoors open. I had a full-on DMT ayahuasca trip that was so profound that like I had loads of purging and loads of visions at the same time. I could see sacred geometry. I could see like my hand going into space and coming back out. And I realized that time and space are really one. All of these things started to happen. I started to connect to the Akashic record, started to download, but the file was so big that I couldn't even get it all downloaded. And then basically what happened is that a few months later, I had a full-on experience with my higher self in front of a mirror, talking to myself. Well, I asked my higher self, am I tripping here? Am I going mad? Is this real? And his reply was, well, what is real? It's like, well, you know, and I'm talking to myself, asking myself questions and getting real-time answers from myself to the point where I actually thought, am I making all of this up? You know? And that basically like was the journey for me to say, okay, I'll have to come back to Mexico again and do some more work on myself because the medicine is here. My higher self said to me, well, come back in 2020. And I was like, I don't want to come back because it was very hard, life in Mexico, right? And you're trying to find yourself and what's not. And after about 2 hours of deliberating in front of the mirror of whether to come or not, I decided, okay, I'm going to do that. And then subsequently had another conversation with myself. My higher self said to me to become a fitness trainer. And that's something that I didn't want to do. In fact, I resisted it because at that time, I was not in the best shape either. I was not in bad shape, but I was nothing like now.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I have to make videos and talk on video and, get back into shape and do social media. And all of these were stories that I was telling myself. And he just said to me, and have you ever tried it? I was like, no. I said, I don't want to do it. He says, well, you're going to do it. And I will never forget, my higher self spoke to me in Spanish for that particular part. He says, te tengo, which means I have you. I said, okay, I'm just tired of arguing with you, tired of fighting. So I decided to come back to 2020 for the Acapulco conference 2020. And then that's when like things started to happen because a month later we had the pandemic. I was stuck here and like more stuff started to happen to me. And it was like more awakenings and the journey just got harder and harder. I'm like, but I ran away from England because it was hard to come here in Mexico. That's even harder. And again, all of my faculties and belief in myself was being tested. And what happened to me then is that because I started to consume books like they were food, my friends started to realize that I know a little bit about a little bit, And what happened is that one of my friends, he asked one of the organizers at Acapulco if they would let me speak. Now, this is him asking for me. I didn't ask, I didn't petition. And one Sunday I got a call and the lady, she says, your mate said that you were quite knowledgeable in certain things. We were having a spiritual day because they were doing a digital summit called Anacovid. And she says, would you like to speak? I was like, yeah, sure. And that's basically what started me to even public speaking like this, because I did that presentation. It was digital, so it was online, in person. It went really well. And then I asked to speak at Acapulco 2022 in person. And they accepted me. And that was when my whole podcasting, I guess, career, for the lack of a better word, or journey, maybe a better one, started. Because I blew people's minds of what I shared, right? With all the ancient hidden history, Anunnaki stuff. Yeah. And there was a guy that I will thank him publicly as well, because I never got to do it, but I met Jason Christoph there. I'd done one of his workshops in 2019.
I know Jason. Yeah.
I met him in the crowd after I saw him. I politely self-invited myself on his show, and he politely, graciously said, okay. And that basically opened the door for me to be speaking. And then another guy heard me. He invited me on his show. We did 3 shows. Then he introduced me to all of his mates that do podcasts. And then it just grew like that. And then now I have my own show and I speak about these things. And it appears now that this is the time where people are searching for purpose and for meaning. And doing podcasting and having my own show is something that honestly I avoided for 2.5 years. Yeah. Because I just didn't want the responsibility. But what I've learned in my journey is that the things that I avoid the most are the things that really give me the most growth. And basically, since starting my own podcast now, I can finally say I found my purpose. So when you ask me the question about purpose and if I'm one of the chosen ones, now I can categorically say yes, because I get up on a morning and I feel like I'm actually contributing to society. I'm helping people in all ways, because I'm very much about the mind, body, spirit complex. and I can teach, inform, and educate people with the information I share on my podcast. And those people that I do end up training physically, because I'm a trainer, then yes, I can help them in their body. And then I also, work with a small company that, does magic mushrooms, and I help people on their spiritual journey and help connect them with magic mushrooms. So for me, I feel like I am actually doing the mind, body, spirit complex in a different, in my own form and way, and helping people in the process. So it gives me great joy to do what I do,
I love what you're doing. And it is about waking up. And folks, if you're Muslim, if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, there's nothing wrong with following those paths. But there's a part of them that's been taken over, and the original teachings have been destroyed for the Western mind, for you to be controlled. And you may not believe that. And you may think, wow, Brad, you're going off the deep end. But the reality is I grew up Catholic and then Christian and all this. And I started to realize I was almost being kept in a childlike state. I wasn't given any power or understanding or the raw truth of what I was as a soul being. And I know that is what Jesus was really trying to say to people, or whoever you follow. It's about reaching the soul and soul consciousness. And so many of the things that you've talked about today, Todd, have been, pretty much my journey as well, that awakening, that shift. And a lot of you hear the word consciousness a lot. Some of you may believe consciousness means intelligence. Maybe it's innate intelligence, but what consciousness really is a particular type of awareness that's independent of the mind. And so what begins to take place, it's not your thoughts, it's perception. You're getting closer and closer to your divine self that's inside you. We're not God, but we're a tiny little slice of God in here. And I love your journey, Todd, where you're talking about where you meet yourself, and this higher self, the soul you, is trying to communicate through all the layers that have been placed on top of us through education, society, mindset, parents, everybody, to try and wake us up to our own divinity that's inside each and every one of us. Because God gave us a mission, and we're here to fulfill it. And some people confuse this work with, it's New Age, or, it's a Luciferian time or whatever. This is soul's innate state of beingness. It's why, if you want to follow Jesus, it's why Jesus was able to do miracles. He was connected to soul. And I truly believe all these great sages were just trying to show us by example what it was like to be awake in this lower world that we're in. And so thank you so much for that. Let's talk about some of the things that you learned in the book of Enki that kind of blew your mind.
Well, what blew my mind is that they basically created us in a lab. And it says there, and in other tablets as well, that basically they mixed their DNA with ours. And in the Sumerian tablets, it says that they mixed their essence with the DNA of a hominid species. So basically, I think it's fair to say Abrahamic religions speak and teach that there was God, then God created man, and then man started with just Adam and Eve. But what I started to realize is that Adam and Eve, Adam basically meant a group of people. He was called the Adama, or in some tablets, the Adapa. And the Adapa/Adama was the first group of people. And basically what they did is that, according to these tablets, they took a hominid female, and then they mixed their essence through in vitro, basically, because this is where the immaculate conception story comes from, because Mary, and if you look at Jewish texts, Mary's mother, so Yeshua's grandmother, was also a virgin birth. How you can have someone to conceive and not have sex with a man is through in vitro. So basically, it was with a zygote, right? They insert a zygote inside of Isis. Isis bore the first Adam, and there's a tablet that with Isis with a baby in her hands, and she says, "My hands have made it," and she carried that baby for 10 earth months, right? And those tablets are saying that they took an egg from a hominid species that existed, female, inserted that egg, fertilized it with the Anunnaki essence, and put it in Isis, who's also known as Anana Ishtar, and she brought a baby to term. And then this is where the Genesis comes from, where it's called Gen Isis, generation of Isis. So even the whole Genesis story is a story about Isis, Anana Ishtar, giving birth to humanity through in vitro artificial insemination. So that was one of the first things that blew my mind.
I don't mean to interrupt. I have to interject for our audience. I want them to understand. In case this sounds like we were going off the deep end, I want you to know that these tablets that he's referring to are thousands of years old, and there's drawings or carvings on stone tablets showing DNA strands of this very story. How did people know about DNA 2,000 years ago? And the spermatozoa, they show that this is all on temple walls. How did these people know about this 2,000 years ago? And for those of you who are kind of like, okay, we're going into crazy zone, whatever, I want you to pick up your Bible, your Christian Bible, and I want you to read where it says, "Let us make man in our image." Let us make man in our image. That's not one person. That's a group of people saying, let us make these beings kind of look like us. And so people miss that point in the Bible, in Genesis, in the Old Test of Amen, is in there. And it's fascinating because this is a great mystery. We're not going to have all the knowledge right away. We're learning it as we go, but this is the beginning of awakening to who we truly are. And a lot of geneticists today, they're confounded, they're baffled a little bit by the fact that the human race all has 200 DNA strands that cannot be identified by anything here on Earth. You know, every thing on this planet, whether it's a plant or it's an animal, it's carbon-based or copper-based. And basically, you have all the elements from this planet in those beings. You know, we have gold in our heart. We have copper in our liver. But there's 200 strands that they cannot identify. And they talk about this all the time. We are, as Carl Sagan says, we are made from star stuff. We're from up there a little bit. So sorry to interrupt. Let's continue with more of what you've learned.
And then what I also learned is that these Anunnaki beings are the ones that taught us everything. They taught us how to be warring because the two main characters in this whole Sumerian tablets are Enki and Enlil. And if you look at those two characters have basically shaped the duality system that we live in. This is why politics, for the most part, is based on a two-party system. And when you look at the caduceus, which is the medical symbol, or also called the staff of Hermes, you see a staff with two twisted serpents going around the staff. And the allegory for those are that those two serpents twisting around the staff represent the duality system that we live in, which is Enki and Enlil system. So on one side of the staff, Enki is good, but when he goes to the next side, he's bad. He goes to the net side good, net side bad, and the same as Enlil, because Enlil is also known as Haldi. And this is new information that's coming out now. Haldi was at one time a giver of consciousness. So it appears that this duality system really came from them. And then when you look at the staff, which shows the middle path, which is the path that Buddha talks about, taking the middle path, and the path that Christ talks about is the narrow path. He says the path is narrow and few find it. So if you look at that and the caduceus, you see the two twisted serpents, which also has another meaning because it represents our DNA. And you see the middle path. And then you get to the middle and you get to the top, you see that there's a big crown on top. So this is where you become the God man. This is where you're enlightened and you grow wings. Not necessarily that you fly, but the wings represent elevation of consciousness. It represents when you are basically becoming the Christ, becoming the Krishna, because Krishna just means Christ in Sanskrit,
Right.
So that was something else that I realized that it was the duality system that they created.
That's the stairway to heaven, they call
it.
That's what that means. The climbing up to becoming a co-creator here on planet Earth. You become a representative of God in that moment. The God man, the God being, such as Moses, who tried to take that mantle as well. So powerful. Continue. I'm sorry. Don't mean to interrupt, but this is
that's fine. And then I learned that basically they're the ones that invented religion. And it appears that the way they first created religion was in Egypt, and it came from Amun-Ra. And Amun-Ra, or Ra, who is really Marduk, who is Enki's son, he is the one that it appears is the one that created the first religion. He is also the one that said in the Egyptian text that after you finish prayer and you give veneration to God, you say my name, Amun. So this is why we say amen now. So that was another thing that I learned from this book as well. And I was like, okay, so this is actually kind of deep here now, because all of this, I started to realize there's so many levels to this. And then I also learned in that book that they were doing clonation. So how the heck could we think that we're the first ones to do cloning if they, and in these tablets that are over 6,000 years old, talk about a time that goes back 450,000 years ago, and they're talking about clonation. They're talking about basically mixing DNA. And we are currently doing these things now, which means that the Bible scripture says there's nothing new under the sun. So I was like, okay. And then I also learned that they, Marduk, he's a schizophrenic psychopath, and he basically wanted to rule them all, a bit like the story of the Lord of the Rings and the Ring of Sauron. He wanted the Ring of Power for himself. So he went to war with the Anunnaki in order to get this power, and he was defeated. He was exiled. Then when he came back, he went to war with them again. They tried to kill him by dropping nukes, which is where the story in the Bible of fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah comes from.
Right.
And basically the nuclear wind is blew west, and that is what destroyed the Sumerian people. So Sumeria was completely destroyed from that wind. And this is the allegory in the story of Lot and Lot's wife, where when Lot's wife looked back to, because she was told by God to not look back, she turned to a pillar of salt. And that's the allegory for the Sumerian people being wiped out because they were completely pulverized from the nuclear smoke. People will come and say, well, how do we know that they were nukes? Well, they actually said they're weapons of mass destruction, in that same book, right?
Right. And they found a stone that's been vitrified, which means it's been heated at such a high level that it becomes molten, and the cracks between the stones actually merged into one. That's why you see this in very various parts of the world where they can't explain it, because the way to vitrify stone means they have to, and I'm not going to get this number right, but it's thousands and thousands and thousands of degrees just striking something to get vitrification. So there is sort of a maybe somebody would call this circumstantial evidence, but the reality is it's there. It's right in front of us.
Yeah, and one of the places that this is very much shown is a place called Mohenjo-daro in Pakistan, right? And the same vitrification took place over there, that when you scratch the surface of the soil, there's sand underneath. And the only way for you to get sand like that is from the vitrification, from temperatures getting extremely high. And up to today, if you take the radiation levels in Mohenjo-daro, they are way, way, way above that. Nothing grows there. Animals wouldn't even eat the corpses that were there at the time. It is just pure vitrification. So, like, when I started to learn about all these things in the book, it really like shocked me. And then like to realize that Marduk Amun-Ra, he's the real, he seems to be the god that is ruling the earth right now. And he's the one that loves all of this child sacrifice and pedophilia and all that kind of stuff, is really him, because he always demanded blood, because he was also the chief god in Babylon. But his name there was called Baal or Baal or Bel. So where you have, so in that same book, in the Lost Book of Enki, what I connected is that Bel is a title and Bel means Lord. So where you see in the Bible, Lord, in most cases, it is actually Marduk that we're talking about, the Lord. And it goes mad, because when you go to a site like Bible Hub and you bring out any passages and you go to the interlink, which basically would go back to the link between the ancient Greek that was written in, you see that when they translate it back to English from the original Greek, the word Lord is written in capitals, it's in a different font, and it looks directly like it was put there. It was inserted there because the original Greek had the word Elohim, and the Elohim, which means the powerful ones or the mighty ones or the judges, and a less accurate translation would be the gods. But there's a guy called Mario Beglino who did some excellent work translating some ancient scripture in the Vatican, who lost his job because he went public and wrote books about what was in it. And he said that originally the word was Elohim. And when you look at the root words and break it down, Elohim means the powerful ones or the mighty ones, which again, and he said a very loose translation is the gods. But the point is that they were plural. It was not one single entity like organized religion likes to tell us. So those were things that I learned, and that book started me down a massive rabbit hole of just searching for information, led me to books like the Kabbalion, the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is one of my favorite books because the Krishna talks about Krishna consciousness. And the reason why I made the statement early in this conversation that Krishna really means Christ is because in Greek, the original word is Christos. Christos went to Latin and became Christ. Christos in Latin to Sanskrit is Krishna. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he is the Godhead supreme personality. And when he revealed his full glory to his student Arjuna, the light was so bright that after a while, Arjuna got scared and he asked him to never reveal his true self to him because it was so much light, so brilliant. And at first he was like, wow, this is so amazing, it's nice and everything. And then afterwards he got scared. And it reminds me of the parable that Christ says that when you first come into, like, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically he says, my words are like sweet in the mouth, but bitter in the stomach. So it's like when you first hearing it, it's nice. It tastes so nice. Like you're telling everyone. But then when it gets inside of you, it causes all these convulsions and, bad, upset stomach because the information is so powerful. And that's similar to like what happened to Arjuna and Krishna, where when he saw the full brilliance of Krishna, he got scared. He was like, no more. I can't do it anymore. Please stop. So, that book, Lost Book of Enki, led me down some really interesting books that I've further read.
I'll blow your mind one more time. Cleopatra got pregnant with Caesar's son, who was named Caesarion, because he was born the first Caesarean section. It's named after him. Caesarean section is named after Caesar's son. Now, when Caesar was stabbed to death in the Senate floor, Cleopatra got word of this, and she realized that they would be coming after her to kill her and her son because the child was mixed. He was, a part of the pharaoh line of rulers, but also because of his blood and his mixed blood, he could rule Rome as well. So Rome and Egypt could have been ruled by Caesarion. And so she knew she had to do something very quickly. So when the child was born and he was of a certain age, she did a ceremony in front of all of her followers, her kingdom. She declared herself the reincarnation of Isis, which meant that Caesarion would now be the son of Isis, which is Esau, the son of Isis, Esau. And so she knew that they were going to look for this kid and they were going to kill him. So she got her most trusted advisors to help get him out of the country. And those two advisors, those two people that she trusted the most, her servants, they were named Mary and Joseph. And those two people took little Esau into India, into Greece, into all these places. And that he's part of the historical record if you look this up. And this is why Thomas, after many years, he moved to India and lived in these areas where Saint Esau, or Christ, had showed up. Well, if you take Esau and you translate it into Greek, the word is Jesus. And so this is part of the zeitgeist that we've not been taught. We've been taught this mystery and made Jesus this God being instead of the human part of him that was raising consciousness and the fusion of both the man and the God part in him. And so they've kept that truth from us for a very long time. And it also explains why, in the Bible, Jesus says, when I come down and rule my kingdom will be this, because he was not only a pharaoh, he was a Caesar for Rome. Just through the bloodlines, he would have ruled over the largest landmass of an empire ever imagined. And that's why they this is something you can look up, anybody can look it up. And a lot of people, they want to poo-poo this stuff, but all I have to say is, tell me the original names of the apostles, not the English version, the original names. And most people can't because they've hidden that from us.
Well, it's very similar to that. They've hidden the original name of the character that became Christ because it took about 1,600 years to go from Yahushua to Jesus. And when you look at it, they took out the HW first because it was capital Y, capital W, capital H. So that part, the Hua, so the Yehoshua, so they took out that whole part and then they just was Yeshua and then after Yeshua, it became Iseus because Yeshua became Iseus in Greek. And then what happened, that further transformed itself into Isus. And the funny thing is that Iseus actually means hail Zeus in Greek. So this is why me personally, I don't use the word Jesus unless it's in an explanatory context. And I always use the word Yehoshua or Yeshua because those are the original names. And in truth, Jesus is actually an egregore. And an egregore is a non-thought form that is created from the collective thoughts of a said group of people. And seriously, because the name never, ever existed. And it's very hard for people to understand that. And when you try to tell people, well, this is what the meaning of an egregore is, and this is what, basically the correct term is that it is a non-physical entity or thought form that arises from the collective thoughts and emotions of a distinct group of individuals. So basically, if you look at the word Jesus that never existed, Jesus becomes its own entity through the collective thought form and emotions of the people that use it. So I tell people, Jesus never existed. His name never was that. His name is Yehoshua or Yeshua. And when you look at the King James Bible, I think it's 1611 when it was first published, it has the word Iseus. So you went from Iseus in 1611 to 2024. Well, I mean, it was a bit earlier than that, probably 1700s that it transformed into Jesus, because it looks like if the King James Bible was the first book printed in English to push the English language, right? So it went through a lot of changes and metamorphoses and transliterations, but we end up getting a spit out version of Jesus. So when I tell Christians, well, there's no actual power in the word Jesus because Jesus isn't real. You have to pronounce the proper word. You have to say the proper word. If not, because we need to understand the etymology of words, and words have meanings. Words cast spells. And all you're doing is you're not filling yourself with any power. You're invoking an egregore, which isn't real. And then you are worshiping an extraterrestrial god, basically because Enlil is Zeus. And then at the end of your prayers, you're saying amen, which is giving reverence to another extraterrestrial god, which is Marduk, aka Amun-Ra. So I say to people that this is the reason why religion, as you rightly said during the conversation, doesn't allow you to have this happiness, this peace. It doesn't allow you to think outside of the box because it's just full of dogmatic statements that you're not allowed to question, and you're told what to think and not how to think.
Wow.
So this is why like conversations like this are very, very difficult for fundamentalist religious people, whether you're Muslim, Christian, or Jew, because I tell people the same thing about Islam. I tell people that if you think that what is written in the Quran and in the hadiths are real, then you have a very big elephant in the room, and is that the Arabic language did not have diacritical marks, which are the dots on top of the rhythm, which is the consonant, until the ninth century, the late 8th, early 9th century. Muhammad died in 632, which is 7th century. And you had a supposed recension in 654 by Abu Bakr, or 652, I think. Yeah. And he was supposed to have standardized the entire Quran. But up to this day, there are over 32 different variants of the Quran. And the standard Islamic narrative is that there's only one Quran, it's never changed, it's the eternal word of God. It existed in these eternal tablets in heaven, and it was given to this guy called Muhammad. But yet still you have another elephant in the room. The word Muhammad is only used in the Quran 4 times, right? So how can this guy be you saying is your prophet and his word, his name is used 4 times? Even Yeshua, who they call Isus, is Isa, sorry. Isa's mentioned, I think, is 100 times in the book. So you have a supposed Christian deity mentioned in the Quran 100 times, and the prophet that they are supposed to be following is mentioned 4 times by name. So what it is now is that all these religious books, they have dogmatic statements. They tell you to open your mouth, swallow this, don't say anything, even if it's bitter in your stomach, ask no questions, hear no lies, and just do as we're told. And this is what all religion does. And religion is basically an intermediary between yourself and source. And you're not allowed to have a personal relationship. Now, I said earlier in conversation that like in religion, like the Islamic, the Abrahamic faiths, you have like good stuff and bad stuff. But there's one fact in the Quran that a lot of people don't know. There's actually never ever mentioned about love. Like at least you can say in the Jewish, the Tanakh and the Christian Bible that there are verses that talk about God loves you, forgiveness, all that kind of stuff, and be kind. But in the Islamic side, you're told that you're a slave of God. Now, I don't know if the meaning of the word slave changed just because it's a religion, but slave doesn't sound like a very positive word to me. So
Yeah.
I don't know why you would want to be a slave of a deity, right? And so this is why it's hard to get through to people, because we have dogmatic statements like that it makes it almost impossible to penetrate the frontal lobe of a person to have reason and logic.
Well, this is a fascinating discussion, because what you're really saying is the human race ready to take the next step to realize that religion has actually gotten in the way of our relationship with God? It's really a control mechanism. And here we are now. Are we ready to stand on that precipice and move forward, understanding that we are soul? We need to just look at each other and love each other. And all these stories and all these control mechanisms need to be let go of. And we, I guess, need to awaken to the fact that we've been controlled for thousands and thousands of years, and I guess didn't really understand it.
Yes, I have seen, because since I started doing public speaking in 2022, and at the beginning, I would have said that I do not think or believe or see that humanity is ready to learn things of a higher level of consciousness, to navigate through this matrix, to connect to their higher self, and to understand some of the things that we've spoken about today. I would have categorically said no. But now, in 2024, I've seen a huge shift to the point where now, like, my inbox on social media is rammed because I get a lot of messages from people now, which never used to happen before because of the content I create and the things that I say. And I've seen, like, because I only started my podcast, I think May 31st was the first time I uploaded. And I have 24 episodes now. I have seen my analytics where the channel is growing. And I'm like, well, this would not have happened in 2022 because I would put out stuff and hardly get any feedback. You know, like I would go on people's shows, hardly get any feedback from anyone. Now I go on shows and I'm seeing a visible difference, because I think that what's happened to humans now is that subconsciously, the vast majority knows that something is not right. The vast majority of people deep inside of their belly, their gut feeling, they can't express it in words. They're like, you know, what is my life? I go to work, I get money. I spend a lot of time away from my family and I come home. I'm tired. I'm out of shape. I don't get to even spend time with my family when I come home because you only have 1 hour, 2 hours maybe. You go to sleep, you go and do it the same thing again. The commute is long. the money isn't really saying anything now because of inflation and the purchasing power of the dollar going down. And people are now starting to ask themselves these questions like, who am I? What am I? From whence did I come? What is my purpose? Right? And these are things that I had to ask myself 7.5 years ago. So it just seems like if I had a small head start over people and then, read a lot of books and did a lot of psychedelics to get me into position here now I can guide people a little bit and talk about my experiences. But I see now that people seem to be ready. Dude, I am having conversations with people that 2 years ago, when the pandemic started, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I had friends that they thought I was absolutely mad. When I told them that I was doing ayahuasca, they said, dude, that's just drugs. I had a conversation with a mate of mine back in Barbados, because I was born in Barbados, who told me he would want to do ayahuasca. And my jaw almost dropped. And I'm like, but this guy said to me, I am mad. This is drugs. And then he said he's starting to consider spirituality and stuff. And it was a very different conversation that we had from 3.5 years ago. So I'm seeing it in my own life with people that are my friends, people that I've had contact with for years that are making the shift, because what happened to him is that some personal things happened to him and he started to awake. And I think that this is basically the catalyst for most people awakening. And I've got another mate that he says that humans only start to wake up until they go through a traumatic experience. Yeah. And that's what happened to me. I had a very traumatic experience with my surgery and everything else that happened. And my mate in Barbados, he had a very traumatic experience with some things going on in his family. And that started to wake him up. And I think that this is the commonality between all of us. Because I even asked my higher self once, well, was my accident in 2005 necessary? And he said to me, but Todd, you're a very stubborn guy. So if we had to make it in a way that basically would force you. And I was forced to even to do this. But the mad thing about it is that even though I was forced, it gives me a great joy to do. So
I can see
is mad because, like, I guess technically podcasting is another job of mine, but I don't even think of it as a job. I just think of it as just like, hey, I'm going to go and talk to Brad today, have a great conversation, connect with a cool guy. And yeah, I mean, yes, technically it's work, but I don't view it as work because I love to do it. And I refused to do it for 2.5 years. And
it's your mission, man. It's your mission.
This is it. Yeah. And it gives me the most joy. Like when I get messages from people, I got a message from a guy last week. He said to me, Todd, you are the one that got me to get back into taking care of myself. I said, what you mean? He says, I can't remember what show it was, but he said to me, I start back training in the gym. I start back boxing again. I start back eating properly. And he said to me, like, I've got a family and I realized that I need to be the leader. I need to set the example for my kids and for my woman and what's not. I was like, damn. So like, I'm helping people to realize that, you know, they can make changes in themselves. So for me, that's why I don't classify this as work. I just classify this as having a bit of fun and try to help people at the same time. And I love doing it, to be honest, you know? So I don't know. I guess, yes, I've been chosen. I guess I'm just answering my call, you know? I'm supposed to do this, you know?
You answered the call. Todd, thank you so much for being on Awakened Nation, my friend. It's been a fascinating conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, please reach out to Todd. You can pick up his podcast. It's called The Conscious Man 7 Podcast. They talk about all of the things that we've talked about today. His guests are fascinating. Also, where else can we get a hold of you, Todd?
So You can find me on Instagram at Adriano_246. And like I said, I am actually an online fitness trainer. So I help spiritually inclined people burn fat and build muscle. So if you are interested in a fitness journey and learning some of the things that I spoke about today, hit me up, because my take is that you need to go through the body. When you go through the body, you actually are connecting to the mind. You build new connections with the mind. And once the mind and the body get together and get married, then you start to discover your spirit, because the spirit is not going to come and really dwell inside the body, because the body is the temple. And if the body is out of shape, the body is weak, the body can't handle the new light and information that you're going to receive on the journey, it's not going to work. So get into shape, start eating better, start doing exercise, get the body moving, because if the body doesn't move, the body gets weak. I have a very bespoke way of coaching, and everything that we spoke about today, the concepts are in my coaching, because I look at the person as a mind, body, spirit complex. So I coach you, I focus a lot on nutrition, mindset, and then also I help you to connect with your spirit. I give you like meditations or books to read and that kind of stuff. So
meditation is the key, my friend.
Absolutely.
It is. Yeah. It gets you centered, grounded, and reach out to Todd, please. If you're out of shape or you're depressed, this is the guy to talk to, because he'll take you deeper just a bit. I do a lightning round. I'm going to ask you 3 questions before we go, Todd. If you have time to stick around. I want people to get to know you a little deeper. And my first question is, do you believe, and they talk about this a lot in this work, that the Anunnaki are coming back to Earth?
I would say yes, that they are. Okay. I do believe that.
Yeah. Because they claim our solar system now is a binary system, which means we have another sun, but it's a dark sun. It's like reddish. And that's where the Anunnaki have their planet. And it's, since the 1980s, NASA has claimed that there's a mysterious planet X coming closer to Earth. So this isn't the realm of science fiction, ladies and gentlemen. My second question is, you talked at the very beginning about your mom and dad being an influence on you. And I know this is important for people who come from the Caribbean or come from, like Italians, their family is everything. Hungarians, Irish, the family is everything. I want to know, how much has your mom and dad been an influence on you in this lifetime?
Huge, because one, my father is the one that kind of got me in this path at a very early age, because from the age of like 10, my father was always like, at that time in his life, he was like seeking truth. So what happened is that he started to go to a masjid, which is basically an Islamic center, and he would bring home some of their doctrine and stuff. He would be telling me about what he was learning. And as a young child, like 10 years old, I was just there, just listening, right? So he sowed seeds of doubt in my mind about religion from a very early age. And my mother has also been very influential, because my mother never told me no for anything that I wanted to try. She always let me, whatever sport it was, tennis, football, cricket, basketball, swimming, whatever it is, she just supported me. And then even when I started this journey, my mother was always in my corner, always supporting me. She never said oh, well, Todd, what are you doing? Think about going back being an engineer or whatever. She said, Todd, if this is your calling, do it. And she always supported me. So I had parents that influenced me. My father from a very young age in terms of to question. And then my mother, where she always supported me no matter what I did. And she listens to all of my podcasts. She supports me in a huge way. So yeah, I've been kind of blessed that, and even me and my sister, we have a very, very good relationship. I mean, there are not many people that can say that about their siblings, but I speak to my sister, I would say minimum 4 times a week. right? Sometimes some weeks is like every day, but like if I'm doing like loads of shows, then maybe we'll miss a day. But I even spoke to her today, and I heard her yesterday, and I heard her Saturday and Sunday. So we speak almost every day, you know?
I love these stories. They're great. Thank you. My last question is, what do you think is the greatest hope for the human race?
The greatest hope, I believe, is that there are people like you and I that are actually in the right place at the right time, because it looks like if this is the time that people now are starting to question even the hardest, staunch, religious, and people that believe in government and in the system are starting to question.
Yeah.
And my biggest hope is that there are people like us that have elected to do this work. We've chosen to answer the call, even though it is the hardest path to actually walk, because people may look at you and I and they see us smiling, but I know for a fact that your journey is being hard, because you don't get to a position to be speaking publicly about these things if you've not had to go through the fire, which is why I always call it my refinement period. And it is so hard that you shed so many layers of yourself. There's so much tears. There's so much disappointment. There's so much like beat down mentally. And we just keep getting it and keep doing it again. And because we've walked that path and I'm connecting to more and more people like us, I have great, great optimism for the future. That does not mean that it's going to be easy, but I have great optimism because I can see a lot of us out there, we putting our head above the pulpit and say, hey, maybe you want to look over there. Maybe you want to read that book. Maybe you want to talk to that person, stuff like that. So for me, I'm very, very bullish on the future, but I'm realistic that what we went through, humanity has to go through collectively. So we're going to have a very, very dark time to come, which may feel like a regression. But if we have been able to come through that, it means that they can. And then once then we can overcome our fears and traumas, I think we can usher in the world that we want to live in, you know? So I have great optimism.
Thank you, Todd. Todd Cave, please reach out and listen to his podcast, The Conscious Man 7. He's all over Instagram. We're going to leave that in the show notes. I connected with him on Facebook as well. Fascinating show today. Thank you, Todd. Thank you for being on Awakened Nation, my friend.
Thank you for having me. And just before we go, I just want to say, it's been an honor to be on your show. Anyone that's interested in magic mushrooms and you want a spiritual journey, just reach out to me at Adriano_246 or my name, Todd Cave, on Facebook. Just send me a message. Tell me you heard me on Brad's show. And yeah, let's connect and I'll help you, man, because we need to overcome our fears and traumas, because those are the things that hold us back in life. Once we overcome those, then we become full of light and love, and we can forgive others because we've forgiven ourselves. So anyone interested, just holler at me and let me see if I can help you. Or if you want me to help you get in shape as well, reach out to me same way and let's get to work.
Reach out, my friends. It's all for the health of mind, body, and soul. Those of you who love watching the show, tune in next week for another extraordinary guest here on Awakened Nation. Until then, bye-bye for now, my friends.